It's a very warm welcome to the Reds Report. It's Barnsley FC longest fan-owned podcast. I think we're in year 7 or 8 now, so quite some time. Probably one of the maybe not the most cheerful one today. With us, as always, should I say, Ian from the Tykesblog. Ian, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Carlo.
Well, it turned out that match day number 43 away at Huddersfield finally saw the final nail in the coffin, and relegation were confirmed. So rather than looking at sort of individual matches, Ian, let's just have an open and frank discussion about how we got here. So is it? There's lots of fans with lots of different opinions. I'll give you my opinion. Let's see what you think. I don't think it's necessarily, the players or the owners or the managers. I think there is a bit of a mix. I think the players, some of them, for whatever reason, have underperformed. We have players that we saw last season that we thought, wow, and this season we looked and they can't string a pass together. I think the appointments of head coaches has been very, very poor. Neither of them any impact really since they were appointed. And obviously, the summer transfer window was very, very poorly used, with 3 signings in Benson that we haven't seen for quite some time, Olare, who's gone back to Belgium, and Iseka, who is a sub at best these days. So let's look at the 3 points initially. First of all, the summer transfer season, Ian. We know DK had left, Mowat had left, and Valeria Ismail had left. Shop gets announced as a new manager. Besides, signing Benson and the 2 Belgians, did you think we needed strengthening anywhere else?
Well, clearly the Benson situation didn't work. I can see why they were trying. They're thinking Premier League standard, ideal fit like for Mowat, but it clearly didn't work. Initially, at first, I saw glimpses of him and I thought, he can ping a ball about. Yeah, this is all right. But he's had that much injury and illness. And to be fair, it's not worked and the jury's still out on him. Well, they've got 2 decent keepers, haven't they? So they're fine there. Centre halves, they've got cover. The main 2, Anderson and Hellick, were fine. Moon and Kitchen have had in different seasons, to be fair.
Yeah.
But they've got strength and depth in that department. And then you'd look at what happened last season with Styles and Britton, and you think, yeah, on the flanks, we're doing all right. Got Gomez in, Benson in. Oh, yeah, that's okay. And then up front,
Vita as well came in.
Vita as well, yes. So you could kind of say most areas were covered when you think of Morris and Woodrow. And then you got Devante Cole in, and then you still had Victor Adebayo in the wings. So you probably think this, like, in certain positions, we've got 2 or 4 players for those positions. Yeah. So you could probably say overall, not too bad. And there were times in the season when they had a fully fit squad. The acid test is when you look at the bench, isn't it? Yeah, you look at your first 11 and everybody comments on it when it comes out an hour before kickoff. But you look at the bench, and at times in the season, not often, but at times you looked and went, there are options. There's 2 or 3 good options there across the squad. But that's been very few and far between. And recently it has looked very, very bare. Yeah. So initially, going back to your question, I think we had strength in depth. Some people probably shoot me down for that, but I think we had options that if somebody got an injury, somebody could come in most positions. So set up, not too bad. Unfortunately, those transfers haven't kicked on, have they?
No. What about the early on in the season, Marcus Schopp is appointed as head coach. What about his approach to games? I mean, I remember early on in the season, we played Coventry at home, a bit of a scrappy match, but, we scraped a win. It was our first home match of the season, I believe, wasn't it? So you think, we've got something here. But it soon became apparent that the style that got us up to 5th place last season under a different head coach had been abolished by all means, from what we know, by request of the board. They wanted a different playing style. How would you surmise sort of Marcus Schopp's playing style, or that he wanted to install in the squad?
From very early on, he wanted us to play out from the back. He wanted a sweeper keeper. He wanted this Man City, Barcelona style, where you build from the back. So Collins, be comfortable with it on his feet, play it out to your centre halves, and we build from the back. The problem very early on with that was we can't play like that. We haven't got the players of that quality to. I remember Birmingham at home, and at the time we were a very good Birmingham, and we drew 1-1, and we were lucky really. They were flying at the time, and I remember their forward line were pressing us like mad, and we just couldn't cope with it. And then the Pontien got nervous, and he was like, "Just kick it, just go upfield or go to the wings." So he wanted to build from the back, but we clearly didn't have the players for it. I also back to that QPR away game, and for about 45, 50 minutes, some of the best football I've seen for a while. They played QPR off the park, so much so that Mark Warburton had to make 2 subs after half an hour and change his formation. But then we were the whole squad were blowing out the backsides, and after 60, 65 minutes, and we got done at the end, didn't we? So I think he wanted to play this new style of football, which was clearly in line with what the board wanted, but we just don't have the players for it. Do not have the players to be able to play out from the back and be comfortable to have the ball and 2 strikers bearing down on you quick and be able to play it out. Yeah. So I think he tried to change it too much too quick.
Yeah. You talked, obviously, last season we were held by the 5 subs rule. Because on that high pressing, that high energy game we had, Villiers-Ismail used it very wisely with, 2 substitutions and sometimes another 2 or sometimes 3 or 5 at once. But much has been made about the players didn't seem as fit as maybe what they were on the Villiers-Ismail. Is that something that you look at maybe like in training or preparation, or is that something to do with maybe the style they played? Because I would have thought, being a non-player, that high intensity game would drain you faster than playing out from the back almost. So is that would you say that's maybe the preparation or a different fitness coach approaching things differently?
It could well be, because did we not lose a fitness coach or something when quite a few left? I'm not sure if we lost somebody in the summer. It could be just style of fitness, that whatever Ismail and his team were doing for the players, and maybe food and nutrition and the way they trained meant that they had those energy levels for 70 minutes, 80 minutes, and then they could make the subs. And then we get somebody in with a different way of playing, and suddenly they're burning out after 60 minutes. Well, what the science is behind it, I don't know, but yeah, you had pretty much the same players could go 90 plus minutes last season, and this season, certainly early on, were struggling to do 60 minutes, and then they were gone.
Results didn't pick up, and before Christmas, the shop got the chop. And Poyer-Asbaghi,
you got it too late.
Poyer-Asbaghi was appointed. Now, Poyer-Asbaghi was linked with the club previously, and he had some success in Sweden with, was it Gothenburg, and the Swedish under-21s, I believe that he did. You have to give a head coach time to gel with the team. And obviously, we were already rock bottom, so we needed results to turn around, and we needed to turn them around quickly, didn't we? That never really sort of came. If you look back over Poyer-Asbaghi's reign as head coach, how did his style differ from Shop's? Did you see a change in style, or was there a style? I almost feel like asking sometimes.
I'll be brutally honest. I don't see what the club saw in him to go after him twice. He admits himself that he didn't know the players and he didn't know the league, which if the board are not listening to that in the new appointment, then there's something seriously wrong. It took him far too long to work out his best 11 and his formation. And he said, I remember his quotes back in, I think, January. And he said he was, I think, like we played West Brom before Christmas and we looked really defensive and we got a 0-0 at home. And he said, I'm struggling with the balance between keeping clean sheets and keeping us tight, but then hurting teams at the other end. And I would say he never actually cracked that, because we were still shipping goals and not scoring enough. So I would say, even when we had that little mini run, March, February, March, I never really saw a style of football. I still, if somebody said, my club's getting Poyas Bargy next season, what's he like? What's his team play like? I wouldn't be able to tell you. Really wouldn't be able to tell you.
How much of that though do you think is down to the fact that he came in mid-season and obviously the players were shop or the club's players, whoever chooses them, and confidence was also all-time low. Bearing in mind, we were in a league with Derby and Reading, who were both, especially Derby, deducted quite a few points. Do you think he had to deal with the aftermath of that shop period that was just utterly disastrous? Did that have an impact on it, do you think, or did he just not show enough as a head coach in his own right to turn that ship round?
See, for me, this is again where I don't have the sympathy, because you look at Paul Ince, he took over a team that was absolutely bombing in Reading and he's got them playing. You look at Ryan Lowe, Preston were absolutely drifting and he's turned them around. Yes, don't get me wrong, he steadied the ship and he turned around and he got some wins. You look at what Cooper's done at Forest. You look at what Heckingbottom's done at Sheffield United. The list goes on that these managers come in and there is that instant manager bounce. He didn't win his first match, I think, in the first 11, 12 games. So you think, oh, there's a bit of sympathy there. But no, because other managers go into an absolute, don't want to swear, but go into a really crap situation, but manage to kind of resurrect it, whether they're as big as Allardyce or Warnock, but even managers right throughout the leagues. I look at League Two. Bill Brown's gone into Barrow and they've suddenly started winning it and they stayed up. So all these managers can do it except Asbaghi.
Yeah, and I felt for both of them, to be fair, that especially on match days, they just came over as very resigned, calm. They didn't feel it never felt like they were coaching from the sidelines. Maybe if a decision went against us, the arm went up, but I never saw that, clicking your fingers and coming over here and swap. And it just felt like when it came to 3 o'clock on a Saturday, just get on with it. And sometimes a little notebook came out, didn't it? But it just felt like.
Would you say? I think, and would you agree that the actual the team played in the same vein of what the manager looked like on the touchline, which was flat?
Yeah, 100%. And don't forget, early on in the season, was it Callum Britton in one of the interviews saying, when we get the ball near the front, we feel like, basically saying they're not training on it, they don't know what they're doing.
Don't know what we're doing. What they're doing every day in training. I mean, surely after a couple of weeks, you'd have made that authority, that stamp on this is how I want you to play. Yes, you'll perfect it over the weeks, but to be 3 months in or saying we shop, to be 2 or 3 months in and the players are turning around saying, we don't actually know what we're supposed to be doing when we get in these areas. That's alarming.
And it is, isn't it? And when, listen, as you know, Barnsley Football Club is a fantastic club, and they've got some fantastic staff that have nothing to do with the squad or the training or and everybody must be hurting, because it just felt at times that the basics were just missing. The basics of getting to know your best first 11, getting to know what motivates each and every one of these players, because some need an arm around them, some need to kick up the rear side, don't they? That didn't work with Shop and Shop went on. Asbaghi comes in, he looks a different type of manager. I thought that after his first sort of 10, 11 games, he'd aged 10, 15 years when you saw him in job interviews. And then it appeared that he's done an interview since he left, that he did an interview he was asked in March, he had a meeting with the board, and he said whatever league we'll be in, he no longer would be head coach of Barnsley. And then you have to wonder, so when did that dedication? Because if I'm talking to my boss and I'm saying, well, when this contract's finished, I'll no longer be working here, it's sort of, you sit back a little bit, don't you? And and I'm not saying that's what he did, but it worries you that he'd already made that decision. Let's go back on his reign. January comes, and it's the board's opportunity to get some, well-needed reinforcements in. Very, very late in the transfer window. Bassi and Keena joined the club.
Yeah.
Things started looking up a little bit, didn't they? Once they were through the
Yeah.
door.
They did make a bit of an instant impact. I'll say two things on the January transfer window, and I wrote about it at the time. They didn't spend any money, and that to me spoke volumes at the board. We're realising it'll be League One next season, and we'll keep our budget for the summer. We'll not spend it now and tie people up into contracts, and then they might have a clause where they can leave if they get relegated and stuff. I know Khalid has come out and said, "Oh, we tried and we didn't quite get them, and we're going to go for those same players in the summer." Well, we'll see if that actually pans out. So they didn't spend a penny when they could have. There were players out there that they could have got, and I know it didn't quite work out. And we mentioned it before with Defoe, didn't work out Sunderland, but that type of player who was bobbing around, going for free, get you on a 6-month contract, get 2 or 3 of those experienced players in through the spine of the team, might have made a difference. And the other one was that the board turned around and ripped up their own data-driven policy, and actually just and all this policy around, we don't progress other clubs' players, so we don't go in the loan market. Suddenly, we've got a couple of loanees. So they've actually contradicted what they said they don't, what they do. But to be fair to the players, they did make an impact. Keena has tailed off somewhat in the last couple of games. He's become very frustrating as he wants to kind of take on every single player and nutmeg a man and stuff. But generally, yeah, they did. Those first couple of weeks, they made a difference. And when that run came, we had a really good front four of Morris, Bassi, Quina with Styles. And I think back to the QPR game at home, Middlesbrough game at home, it did click for a month or so.
Yeah. And it's strange, isn't it, that when you look at the money they have spent, the board, I reckon the biggest two amounts has been the compensation paid to bring Shop into the club and Asbaghi into the club. And the biggest profit we've probably made is on Gerhard Struber and Valerian Ismail on the pitch. You talked about the very much the stats-based approach to head coach selection, to player selection. Well-known fact now that Paul Conway, that the Belgians will sign outside of this sort of spreadsheet. I don't know if it was a hunch or another club. We are where we are. It's been a season to forget for many reasons, and now we're already starting to look ahead at League One. The summer period's going to be really important, isn't it? Because surely somebody needs to take ownership of the mistakes and say, we have to make sure this doesn't happen again. We need a head coach. Dare I say, we need an English head coach that might have worked in this, or at least somebody who's managed in this league before. Now the club will say, well, Ismail didn't. And although Ismail did play in England, but Struber didn't, and Stendel didn't. And in the game of chess, we can then say, but look what happened with Shop, and look, So I suppose out of five managers, 3 did really well, 2 not so well, but still, it's a danger, isn't it? And same with the players that were signed. How quickly do Barnsley need to bring a head coach in, or is Martin Devaney the man for the job?
Well, firstly, their managerial appointments have been hit and miss. That's fair to say. I'm not saying it's been a completely disaster, because under Stendel in League One, we played some good football, got straight up, got 91 points. Struber certainly reignited the side. And obviously Ismail did what he did. Khalid, by his own words, said, we've worked out that Barnsley always start the seasons slowly, and we need to understand why. Well, clearly you need to start your managerial recruitment now. And that's why initially after the Huddersfield game, the journalists had been briefed that Poya would stay for the remaining games, which obviously then something changed over the weekend and he left. And I was thinking, well, why, if you're talking about with slow starters, why are you keeping that man in charge for another couple of weeks? Get on with the job. So they need a manager who knows that league, who knows knows players in that league. They know, as an example, you get somebody in, and I'm not advocating anybody, but you could say a Holloway, a Warnock, anybody who knows that league and can pick up the phone and can ring 4 or 5 players who are probably journeymen, who've they've been at loads of clubs with them and they know and they're tried and tested, and go, look, give us a year or 2 at Barnsley. Fancy coming joining me and playing for Barnsley. Let's get promotion. And you could quickly, it could work very quickly, couldn't it? And you could get your transfer business done very quickly and get your pre-season in and hit the ground running in August. Yeah. Whether that will happen, we'll have to wait to see, won't we? We could be 1st of September or whenever the transfer window shuts and still be suddenly signing. Is Devaney the man? I don't know, isn't the honest answer. I don't think you can judge him off one match, and you certainly can't judge him off last night. I would go experience in that league.
It's interesting what you mentioned about you mentioned like you know, a Warnock. We're not saying it needs to be that person.
No,
but somebody. Yes. Yeah, exactly. And let's not forget, Ben Mansford was at the match last night, and he's sort of had the last laugh, hasn't he? Because Blackpool hasn't got a big budget.
No,
Blackpool came up from League One and they've had a fantastic, absolutely fantastic season. 16th, I think they are. They might have climbed a couple yesterday. And we played Huddersfield on Friday. Most of that squad were free transfers. You know, the Huddersfield squad. Some a little bit older, but it brings that balance.
Yes.
The board needs to look at the arrival of Michael Solbauer and what that, you know.
Yeah,
I dare say that Hellick and Anderson became better players because they were playing with Solbauer.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah,
you know, somebody was there just to sort of and when we talk about a leader on the pitch, I know we've got a captain and Woodrow's back, and if he's not there, then it's Mads Anderson. Both, to me, really, really good players, not necessarily leaders. And I think when you talk about a leader, that's somebody with a wealth of experience they can call upon when suddenly you go down or a teammate is injured and tactically you need to make changes. And I think we've been lacking leadership.
Oh, massive.
On the pitch.
Yeah, massively. I've said before, when you look at the squad that went down and Stendhal took over, the club kept the spine of the team, which was Adam Davis in goal, Pinnock and Lindsay at the back. You had McGeehan and Mowat. Jacob Brown was on the wing, but then you had Kiefer Moore and Woodrow up front. The spine of that team. Then you throw in a Ben Williams or Jordan Williams, whoever. But the spine of the team was there. I don't know what our spine of our team is going to look like come August. And it's on a knife edge. Where we are now is on, and you look at, you're right to say Blackpool, absolutely spot on. I tweeted a Blackpool fan today and said, because I think Steve was like commenting how good their fans were last night. And I said, well, they were brilliant at Bloomfield Road in September. They were so noisy. I remember going in 2018 when we went there and they were staying away because Oyston was in charge. Yeah. And I think some places, most games, there's more away fans than home fans. And look at it now, how it's come through. And I think fair play. The budget's probably similar to ours. You look at Luton's another classic example. You look at Coventry. I know Doug O'Kane's mentioned it several times about how Luton have managed to get a bit of experience and youth. They've had horrendous injuries this season and still managed to perform. You get the right man in with the right group of players, you can turn it around. But the board it's absolutely, they've been here 4.5 years now and it is on a knife edge. If they get it right, we could be talking in 6-12 months' time, completely different, bit more positive. We're heading back to the Championship. And you say, fair enough, I'll hold my hands up, praise where it's due, or it could go horribly wrong and they get the wrong man in and they have a poor transfer summer and we could be looking at losing at home on a Tuesday night to Exeter City and being 14th in the league and having about 7,000 at Oakwell.
Yeah. A couple of more points, Ian. You've got a spot on, it's on a knife edge. The worrying signs and the dark clouds that people talk about is the fact that the other clubs they've got stakes in are not performing very well either. You know, when Barnsley got promoted, and another one of their sides got promoted, Nancy, I think, got relegated. Sorry, when Barnsley got relegated, another one of their clubs got relegated.
Nancy.
Asbjørg are on their 4th head coach of the season. One of them that's now gone saying that the board are interfering in which players he should play and gone off with stress.
Sounds familiar, this.
Well,
Because
yeah. So
let's face it, we're on with caretakers. We're on our fourth manager
yeah, yeah,
this season
and
with
and
caretakers.
and that's a worrying sign, isn't it? Because
Yeah,
they've made their millions and billions in business, whether that be property, whether that be leisure, whether that be marketing, whatever that may be.
yeah,
That doesn't make them football managers, does it? And
no,
when you buy a club and you are the owner of the club, I remember Patrick Ryan having a meeting with Lee Johnson and saying, you need to stop, excuse my friend, pissing about with these different formations. We need to play 4-4-2 with two wingers down the side. Fans identify with that, and we've got the players to do it.
yeah,
So, and I think the worrying thing for the fans is, well, it is for me, that it just feel, and I said it in one of the interviews I did for Look North, that it just feels like we're getting choked of our identity. Like these people have come in, they have no knowledge about football. I don't think any of them, and I know they come with a scarf, and it's great that they bought the club, but when it comes to knowledge of football and the rules and everything else, that I'm sure they'll get up to speed. But when they get involved in the uh, decision-making process around who starts at centre back, who plays in midfield, it's a losing battle for the fans, is it? Because as
yeah.
fans, we can say, why is he playing? Why is they not getting a goal?
Mm.
We saw Will Hundermark play yesterday. When we'd seen him before, it was like, oh, only flashes, but it was positive,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
yeah.
And then the training him up or in a new position or whatever. I don't know what the fascination is. I don't know what the fascination is. And if we were really short in that department and you wanted to use him as an emergency defender, I get that completely. But, Kitchen, Vita, Britton, Halleck, Anderson, Moon, I mean, we're all right. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
don't know why they need it. So I worry that they're interfering, I don't want to call it, but they're meddling into what should be a football man's decision-making process.
Yes.
Is part of where we are at the moment.
Yes, you look and you think they are repeating their mistakes at all the clubs. That's what it looks like, and you listen or you see stuff coming out of France, and you think they're mirroring exactly the same, and they've got the same results. Surely, the definition of insanity, as we say, doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
Yeah.
You want an identity. You want to go to the match. We're not going to win every game, but you want to see a bit of passion. You want to see a bit of football, a bit of entertainment, and go away going, it was a good game. That enjoyed that. Yeah, we didn't get the right result, but that was good performance. I can see some shoots of recovery. I can see this is positive. That's positive. We've not had anything. It's flatlined all season, and it's been hard. It's been a really tough season to drag yourself to go.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the worrying, is that they seem to be making the same mistakes at all these other clubs, and they're not learning from it.
Yeah. Yesterday, the last 15, 20 minutes, I was in the West End with the commentary bit. I looked over to the Ponty end, and bit of a shock, to be fair, how many people have gone. There weren't that many there. I know they announced 12,000 because of the season ticket holders. It was very clear that, that
Yeah,
they weren't all there yesterday. And that's fine, because that's how they do it. It's not a problem. It is that time of year again when fans are asked to, if they want, spend 300 whatever pound it is, wherever you sit, on a season ticket. Now, the divide between the club and the fans seems to have got a little bit wider again, not because of the results, but maybe more in the manner of two head coaches that have left and that bit of disarray. I'm not calling anybody out for buying a season ticket or not buying a season ticket, because you know what? We're all adults, and we'll make our own decisions, and we'll have our own reason for it. And I get the people that say, I'm staying away, and I understand the people that say, I want to support the club and I want to support the players. To me, there is no right or wrong. What, in your eyes, should, because when we talk about the club, we know when things are not going well that Mr. Conway and all the other ones are not often there. So Khaled is there as the CEO. What, in your eyes, needs, or does the club, or does Khaled, or whoever need to do to try and get the fans? Because if anything, with a shortfall in television revenue, some of the key players that will leave to make up that shortfall, They need the season ticket to bring money back into the club. What do you think the club could or should be doing to try and mend that sort of relationship, or that, that break or that breakdown in the relationship between the fans and the club?
I think ultimately it comes down to communication. And I think, again, Khalid got the wrong end of the stick. I saw an article in the Yorkshire Post where he was criticising being called out for saying that they don't communicate enough. And he went on and said, well, you see other clubs like Man City and some others that you don't see their owners coming out. He got the point all wrong. When things are running smoothly at a football club, supporters are not that bothered. They don't want it. Last season when we were in fifth, were we really asking for Conway then? It's what happens on the pitch ultimately transfers then ripples into the stands and how everybody feels. And if we're performing on the pitch, everything's relatively rosy in the garden. But communication is key. When things are going well, fans don't need that reassurance. Fans don't particularly need to hear anything. But when things are not going well, fans need answers, and even or explanations to what you're doing behind the scenes. So explain about, if you can, about your transfer policy or what your plans. I know you can't always give too much away because you're trying to sign players and you keep it quiet, and I accept some of that. But when things are not going well, you need to communicate. And when things are going well, you don't need to communicate as much. Dane Murphy said it in an interview way back when he apologised that the communication hadn't been good at his term. And they're still making the same mistakes now. Come out, front up, and work with the supporters. Don't agitate them anymore.
I have to say, I 100% agree with you. I read the article, and we tweeted from the Reds Report account saying we don't want a seat on the board. We don't want to vote. We don't want to know which players we're signing.
No.
What we as fans want to know is, when you look back on this season and you think of everything that's gone wrong, and you're thinking about players that were signed, coaches that were signed, who is going to come out and say, we've had a look at it and we've realised something needs to change?
Mm-hmm.
We know we're not the only club with this issue. There's a few. So I don't want to sit next to him. I don't want to sit next to Paul Conway at the next business meeting. What I would want to say is somebody going to come and say, we're going to make a change in the way we approach transfers, or, the age limit? And let's be perfectly honest. I get not all clubs do this, but we're not a city with millions of people where the club is one of many. With a relatively, dare I say, small town in Yorkshire, where people are used to hard graft and honesty.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, these people call themselves, what do you call the stewards of our club, aren't they? It's our money, Next week, when I go to hand over my 300 and something pound for a season ticket, ultimately, I'm trusting, probably not so much Khaled, in fairness. I'm trusting Paul Conway and those people on the board to invest that money wisely. And that should go more towards a Valerian Ismail than a Marcus Shop or a Poyer Asbaghi. And mistakes have been made. And those mistakes have cost us £7 million because that's the difference in television revenue. So I think when fans get it wrong or they misbehave or something, the club will always hold them to point of saying, we can't have this and we can't have that. It just seems when people high up in the club are making decisions that don't work out, they almost become anonymous, don't they? Paul Conway is in the fan zone when we're doing great and everything is back, and look at us and yo Yorkshire. And when we can't strip two passes together, and
Never
and in one of the interviews they mentioned that non-C is going to be more of a focus for the consortium, and as a Barnsley fan, that's not what you want to hear, is it? Because my team should be the priority, and I get when you're 07, and I get Khaled saying that's why he's in charge, but Khaled wasn't. I don't think Khaled is part of the decision-making process that brought Marcus Shupp. Well, he won't, because Marcus Shupp to the club, or Poyer Asbaghi. And I think just open and honest, because that's when you get the best out of your fans. That's when they'll turn up in their thousands to support you.
And even if they tell us something we don't particularly want to hear, at least come out and say, this is our plan for the next 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, and judge us on that. Come out and give us something that we can work with or we can hold on to. I liken it to like Oldham Athletic and their owners that have come in, and the fans, going on the pitch. They've had all sorts of demonstrations because, again, it's been poor communication. Yes, again, they've been getting relegated and poor off the pitch. But again, the fans have looked to their owners and said, "What's going on? What's happening?" And they've just been so standoffish, not even been in the country, and you just create this negative force between the two.
Yeah.
Instead of coming out and saying, "We've had a bad season, this, that, and the other," but this is our plan. This is our plan for the next 12 months. At least don't shy away and run away. Let's try and work together and give us something to just come out and tell us.
And you know what? And you don't have to stand in the centre circle at Oakwell before a 3 o'clock kickoff against Preston to do that. You've got the details of everybody that had a season ticket or has bought a ticket to come to a match this season. And when you send letters out for the renewals, just enclose a letter and say, at certain times this season we got it wrong, and we're going to do our damn hardest to make sure this doesn't happen again. And it just feels that those, and when I say cheap opportunity, I don't mean cheap as in, but that easy fixes on there.
There's easy wins with supporters, isn't there? That they can come, and it's doing more regular Q&As. It's like, say, doing the personal touch. It's being open and honest with fans. Because you look at the issue with the West Ham, there's so many things that just seem to contradict over the season that you suddenly don't believe these people. And let's be a bit more transparent and just tell the paying public.
And I still think that when you have a group of owners, and on a separate note, they are taking each other to court. That don't make for a happy place. We've not addressed all the stuff that have left and everything else. But it's when you look from the outside in, you sort of think, no wonder it's all gone wrong. Marcus Shop in his next job might do really, really well. Maybe, his hand was one hand behind his back because the board wants him to use that player or that player to increase value. Or, I don't know. But
but you've got a point
for
now.
a happy place.
But you've got now, Carlo, haven't you, where fans, I'm not saying they're physically turning on each other, but a little bit on social media, and you alluded to it really, some people are saying, I'm not going to buy, that's their prerogative. Some people are saying, I'm going to buy. And, and a lot of football, following a football team is like religion. You just do it every year. You go every year, don't you? Yeah. But it's created this where fans are almost turning on each other, and it's becoming toxic in the stands. Not literally fist hands and all that kind of stuff, but just kind of people's views that because of poor communication, plus obviously what's been happening on the pitch, fans are suddenly almost turning on each other. And it just doesn't, it shouldn't be like that, should it? So many people have come up to me and said, what's happened to Barnsley this season? What are you doing down there? And what's happening and stuff? And you could say to him, well, how long have you got? Because it's not just because Ismail's gone. It goes much deeper than that. Much deeper than that. And I'm like, how long have you got for me to tell you? Because they obviously don't hear it because Barnsley isn't often on a national scale, so people don't hear. They just see the league table and they see the results on a Saturday at 5 o'clock and go, oh, but the hell, Barnsley's lost again. But how long have you got? It runs much deeper than we lost our manager and we chose a poor replacement.
Yeah, and you know what? If that was the only problem, that's easily solved, isn't it? Because you have another manager in, and we've seen it where at Christmas we were at the bottom of the table, and then suddenly, and it's strange that nearly 5 years after them taking over, one of the aims was to have us as a solid championship team, and on the 5th anniversary of the takeover, we were going down again to League One, and probably in a worse situation than when they took over, because at least we had a settled squad. Jose Moraes left, Stendhal came in, and you talked about the spine was there. We've had some performances that maybe lacked a spine, as in like a settled and the experience and everything else. Ian, listen, we could probably carry on till next week, couldn't we? Thank you very much for all your contributions over this past season. Always enjoy reading your blogs and your vlogs on the Tykesblog on Twitter. So please check it out and subscribe. who knows? Maybe in a couple of months, when the first few players are out of the door and the next ones are through the door, when the head coach is announced during the summer, we'll get together. We'll have a bit of a virtual barbecue, and we'll check in with each other.
Absolutely. And just on that subject, and we talked before you were recording. It can be difficult for yourself, myself. You know, we have these podcasts and blogs, etc. And sometimes you think, oh, am I being too negative, or it's all negative that I'm putting out? But we will call it out when it needs calling out, but we will also praise when it needs praising. And when it was working last season, we would say why it's working, etc. But it's been a real tough one this season, and we just hope that we can next season be talking about more positive things on and off the pitch.
Yeah, and I just want to add, the Red Report's going into its 8th year. We did a show that was negative about Lee Johnson, everything, when we lost at Altrincham on a Saturday afternoon in the FA Cup, and I was absolutely wet through. But we've also had really positive shows when we went to Wembley and we won, or when we got to the playoffs this time last season. So I think the aim for the Red Report always been to be a platform for people to discuss, and we might not agree, and that's fine. I don't sometimes agree with my wife. We've been married nearly 30 years. That doesn't mean we have to fall out. It just means we have difference of opinions.
No.
But I think it should sort of reflect different people's opinions. And after the season we've had, for us to maybe talk about the wonderful food in the East End, I think will be detrimental to the fans that ultimately listen to the podcast. And all we want to be is a voice. We'll never be a voice for them all, because everybody will feel different. And I like, rather than saying, well, it's going shit in it, I'd rather look into, well, why is it going, and what should the club try to do to try and avoid this? So so whether you listen to Red All Over, whether you read the Tykesblog, whether you listen to us on the Reds Report, these are all just people giving up their own spare time to put something out there for Barnsley fans. So if you don't agree, then that's absolutely fine. But let's not personally abuse and attack people because their opinion doesn't reflect with yours. Because ultimately, and we've seen it, haven't we? I've sat in the Ponty end with 12,000 others, and I'm going, just hold on to the ball, just hold on to the ball. And the bloke next to me is going, who faked? Because you know what I mean? We all have different ideas. Ian, thank you again very, very much. I hope to catch up with you again soon. And this has been the last Reds Report of the season. We'll be back next season when we'll be hopefully the longest running League One podcast.